Padre Pio played a pivotal role in leading countless individuals toward embracing Christianity and deepening their faith in Jesus Christ. Esteemed as a saint, he was graced with the holy stigmata, bearing these marks with profound dignity and humility. His life, defined by suffering and adversity, was born in quiet endurance, anchored by his deep faith in Jesus Christ. The events leading up to his final moments remain a profound mystery. Remarkably, Jesus Christ appeared to converse with Padre Pio just before he passed away, revealing through him a cryptic message. This narrative becomes even more compelling towards the end, urging viewers to stay tuned. In 1918, Padre Pio encountered the stigmata for the first time, with wounds manifesting on his hands and feet. One day, after conducting Mass, and while enveloped in a drowsy tranquility, he experienced an overpowering peace that eclipsed all other feelings. Suddenly, a figure, reminiscent of one he had seen in 1913, appeared before him, this time with bleeding hands, feet, and side. This sight filled Padre Pio with terror, evoking a sensation so intense it felt nearly fatal. Yet, through divine grace, his spirit was fortified, and he survived. This marks the beginning of an intriguing chapter. After the apparition disappeared, Padre Pio found that he, too, bore bleeding wounds on his hands, feet, and side. The stigmata, mirroring the wounds of Christ, were a divine gift, affirming his authenticity as a confessor and his gift of soul discernment. The allure of Padre Pio for many was significantly tied to the stigmata, through which the divine steered souls from sin and despair towards the promise of new life. In the quiet days leading to his passing in 1968, Padre Pio experienced some of the most extraordinary moments of his life. The stigmata, which had been a hallmark of his identity for half a century, were so deeply embedded in his essence that imagining life without them became nearly impossible. Yet, as he neared the conclusion of his time on earth, the wounds on his hands, feet, and side started to heal. These marks first appeared on the morning of September 20, 1918. 50 years to the day, on September 20, 1968. After gradually fading, they vanished completely, whether visible or hidden. The stigmata remained a fundamental part of Padre Pio's identity. If you enjoy our content and want to support us, click on the Super Thanks button below. Your super thanks is not just a donation. It is a blessing that supports our mission to share the transformative journey of Jesus. Interestingly, Jesus first appeared to Padre Pio in 1913, 5 years before the stigmata's appearance, an event that demands closer attention. In a letter to a fellow priest, Padre Pio recounted a harrowing vision that he witnessed. Still in bed on a Friday morning, he saw Jesus, but this time, he appeared bruised and disfigured. A vision that deeply distressed Padre Pio. Despite the difficulty of the sight, Jesus presented him with a multitude of sins from various walks of life, including high-ranking church officials. Some were shown celebrating Mass, others donning or removing their holy garments. This vision captured Padre Pio's full attention and moved him to tears. Did Jesus cast a sorrowful glance upon those priests? 2 tears made their way down Jesus' cheeks, betraying a profound distress mixed with evident dismay. Turning away from the assembly of priests, he denounced them as butchers. This harsh rebuke stemmed from his deep-seated heartbreak over their mishandling of their sacred responsibilities. Jesus then addressed Padre Pio directly, imparting a grave message. "My son, believe not that my agony was confined to 3 hours. Rather, it extends until the end of the world. For the sake of those souls I hold dearest." These words underscored the perpetual nature of Jesus's anguish for the sake of humanity. Jesus went on to articulate the depth of his sorrow during his ordeal, stressing the critical need for vigilance. During such pivotal times, he yearned for even the slightest gesture of human empathy, yet felt utterly forsaken amid widespread apathy. The coldness and neglect of his own followers intensified his suffering as he mourned the meager reciprocation of his boundless love and the addition of scorn and disbelief to their disregard. Jesus confessed that there were moments when his frustration grew so intense that he was tempted to exact punishment, if not for the soothing presence of benevolent angels and souls. In the first letter penned after receiving the stigmata, Padre Pio divulged these revelations in full. He recounted how, on the morning of the 20th of the previous month, after celebrating Mass, he encountered a figure shrouded in mystery, akin to one he had seen on August 5th, but now marked by bleeding hands, feet, and side. This apparition struck him with terror, the intensity of which was indescribable. He felt on the brink of death, a fate he believed imminent, if not for divine intervention that bolstered his spirit, preventing it from shattering. As the vision faded, he realized that his own hands, feet, and side were exuding blood. "Consider the torment I endure, a suffering that afflicts me nearly every day. The wound in my heart, in particular, bleeds without cease, especially from Thursday evening to Saturday. Dear Father, the torment from these wounds, and the deep sorrow they instill in my spirit overwhelms me. I fear succumbing to death from the loss of blood, if the Lord does not heed my earnest prayers for alleviation. Might Jesus, in his profound kindness, extend this mercy to me? Could he perhaps free me from the disgrace these visible signs impose? My prayers will ascend without rest, imploring his compassion to erase these marks that bring me such humiliation and insufferable distress." Among all individuals, Jesus selected Padre Pio to bestow upon him his own sufferings, a burden he carried for the next 5 decades, alongside the pain it entailed. Then, unexpectedly, the narrative shifts. Following a strenuous Mass on September 22, 1968, Padre Pio, at 81 years old, weary and weakened, relied on the support of his Franciscan brethren to get to his bed. In the twilight hours of September 23, after giving confession and renewing his vows, he managed, despite his frailty, to voice the names of Jesus and Mary, clasping a rosary in his hands. Around 2:30 a.m., a slight improvement in his condition was noted. Yet nothing out of the ordinary was observed by those around him. It appeared, however, that the saint, who had encountered countless mystical experiences in his lifetime, was perceiving something beyond the visible. Gathering his remaining strength, he murmured, "I see 2 mothers," and softly uttered Maria before his passing. The essence of his vision remains undisclosed, suggesting he might have been alluding to his spiritual mother, the Virgin Mary, and his earthly mother. The concept of the Church as a maternal figure is a long-standing symbol, though the specifics of how Padre Pio might have perceived this in his final moments remain ambiguous. It's plausible that his last utterance of Maria was an invocation of the Blessed Virgin. Yet it's equally notable that his own mother bore the same name, Maria. Adding to this narrative, Sister Rita Montella, known for her close bond with Padre Pio, recounted assisting him in his last hours. She testified to believing that not only the Virgin Mary, but also Saint Francis and Saint Clare were present in his room as he passed away. This account suggests that Padre Pio's reference to Maria likely alluded to the Virgin Mary. It seems fitting, then, that a life so intertwined with the divine and mystical would end with a vision of such profound significance. Padre Pio's celebration of the Mass was extraordinary, often extending up to 3 hours, embodying a deep spiritual immersion. That was the highlight of his daily life, and the wellspring of his spiritual vigor. Rising at 3:30 a.m., he devoted the early morning to prayer and meditation, spiritually preparing himself for the Holy Mass. When it was time to lead the Mass, Padre Pio was profoundly engaged, embodying the Passion of Christ, and deeply aware of the sacredness of his role. His emotional involvement was palpable. He was known to weep during the service, displaying a range of emotions from somberness to radiance. His intense devotion sometimes manifested in quiet weeping and physical tremors, underscoring the depth of his connection to the divine. His entire presence radiated a deep bond with the Passion of Christ, as though the divide between the altar and Calvary had vanished. Furthermore, Padre Pio's thorough dedication to every aspect of the Mass, from the rubrics to the consecration, extended the duration of his ceremonies. He engaged with each component in a meditative manner, pouring personal significance into every gesture, and imbuing the liturgy with heartfelt emotion. His clear enunciation of each word, especially during the consecration, underscored its profound importance to him. He often dedicated additional time to adoring the consecrated bread and wine, reflecting his deep reverence. In his later years, due to declining health, his Masses became shorter, typically around an hour, highlighting that the Mass transcends its outward form, connecting us with Calvary and the presence of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Yet, there's more to his story. Throughout his life, St. Pio bore witness to the evils of the world, enduring through the turmoil and hostility of 2 world wars. Despite such adversity, his devotion to the Mass never faltered, continually drawing him closer to Calvary and an encounter with Jesus Christ, our Lord. But Padre Pio's spirituality didn't stop there. A devout follower of the Virgin Mary, he spent substantial time in prayer with the Rosary, drawing strength from it daily. His devotion to Mary was not a later development. From a young age, his love for her was constant and intensified over the years. Padre Pio's affection for Mary was integrated into his daily life, praying the Rosary at every opportunity. Whether in his hands or kept within close reach, the Rosary was a constant in his life. One of the Capuchins who assisted him noted Padre Pio's practice of washing his hands, while always ensuring one hand remained free to hold his Rosary, illustrating his unwavering commitment to this spiritual discipline. He once remarked that it was a mistake for anyone to think they could get through life without the assistance of the Blessed Mother, emphasizing the Rosary as a formidable tool against the evils of the world. Padre Pio was devoted to praying the Rosary daily, holding it in such regard that he even slept with several under his pillow. On an occasion when he couldn't locate his rosaries, he urgently requested someone to bring him his weapon. For Padre Pio, the Rosary transcended mere recitation. It was a profound expression of love towards his Heavenly Mother. His devotion to the Virgin Mary was deep-seated, turning to her in times of difficulty and believing firmly in her powerful advocacy to bring healing to both body and spirit. He advocated for the daily recitation of the Rosary, convinced that devout and heartfelt prayer could lead to miraculous possibilities. Padre Pio stood as one of the most revered saints within the Catholic community, distinguished by a connection with God. So intimate that God shared his wounds with him. While we may not all be called to bear the stigmata as Padre Pio did, let us seek from our Lord Jesus Christ the fortitude and valor needed to approach the sacrament of Holy Communion more closely and endeavor to improve ourselves, surpassing who we were before. If you enjoy our content and want to support us, click on the Super Thanks button below. Your super thanks is not just a donation. It is a blessing that supports our mission to share the transformative journey of Jesus.